The MCU has some new toys on their hands with all the Fox properties. We've got Fantastic Four, we've got X-Men, we've got some pretty big worlds that can now be integrated into the MCU. So, how should they do it? Yeah, here's some ideas from me. Hey, everybody, it's Perch. Just driving along, thinking about Fantastic Four and the X-Men and kind of the impending entry into the MCU and how they pull this off. So, let me say this from the perspective of if I'm thinking about this from the idea of putting a bunch of interesting toys in the toy box that allows the MCU to do another 20 to 30 movies that are all going to do well, hook off of each other, and build some momentum within themselves. So one of the things that the Phase One, Phase Two, Phase Three, kind of the MCU to date had going for it was that it in the background built up this mega threat, which was Thanos, and it started that from the first Avengers film where we saw the smiling Thanos at the end, and you had Loki there kind of as a thread in the early stage, but the Thanos threat was out relatively early in the film. I think there had been two Iron Man movies, a Captain America movie, a Thor movie, a Hulk-ish movie, and I think that's it. And then we got the Avengers, and then that led, of course, to where we are today. So how do you take? So now the current slate of the MCU, we've got a bunch of things going on. We've got Wakanda, and you've got some difficulties. So one of the things that is tricky whenever you have a movie like this or a universe like this is the threats have to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Otherwise, it feels like the characters are taking a step backward. Now they get a little bit of a reset since they've had the world kind of decimated. Half the people disappeared. Now they're back. That's going to create some chaos. It would be wise for the MCU to lean into that chaos a little bit. Don't brush it off. Don't have the next movie come out. Unfortunately, Spider-Man came out and kind of touched on it a little bit, but don't go too jokey with it. You gotta maintain that sense of disruption in the background. You gotta keep people a little bit on edge. Doesn't mean you make the MCU go dark. Just means that don't just hand wave that away. You need to keep referencing the fact that this universe shaking event did happen. The other problem that you've got with the MCU is you've got Black Panther and you've got Wakanda, which is this super tech forward nation. Now they're going to share some of their technology and things with the outside world. And how is that going to work? How is that going to put the right things in play? With you have this kind of disparity between different countries. Unfortunately, if you go to a war-torn, ravaged nation in a future MCU film, the question that's going to come up is, why didn't Wakanda help here? What happened? So I think there's a couple things to kind of sort out. So the first thing I do, judging from starting with the Fantastic Four. So first thing, I would bring the Fantastic Four in younger, not as young as the Ultimate Universe Fantastic Four, but still pretty young. And the reason being is you want this anchor team around for a while, so you need to pick some actors that are going to be in the game for 15 to 20 years. And I would have the Fantastic Four be rooted in kind of exploring the mysteries. I'd have their same accident that happened with them have freak cosmic disturbance because of all the crazy stuff that's been going on kind of in the cosmos. I mean, we've had Thanos do his thing, and we've had all this kind of we've had a lot of disruption in the universe in general. So have the Fantastic Four start up that they're going to try and do interdimensional travel with the idea that we're going to help defend the Earth against future threats. Have their origin rooted in what's happened already, that there's been major disruption to the Earth. We've had people coming to the Earth. So, get Reed Richards kind of in the mind of, I need to protect the Earth. And that should be part one of kind of that team's foundation, is that they're explorers. They're going to try and find the threats before they hit Earth, and they're going to try and protect the Earth. So like if we're pulling things from the comic book, the idea of making a shield around the Earth, that should come from Reed Richards. I think those kinds of ideas should spin out of there. Reed Richards should come on board with the idea that the Skrulls helping Nick Fury and some of the things that were revealed in the last Spider-Man movie, he should start to take control or manage that. Shield is an old idea. He's going to be the future forward. root the Fantastic Four in the future and science and finding the threats, protecting the Earth. That should be kind of the Fantastic Four's mandates. You have this super genius Reed Richards. Unlike previous films and attempts, make Reed Richards like go hard into like Hickman's version of Reed, like super genius. Don't try and like, well, we'll make him just kind of fairly smart but dorky, and we'll make the other Fantastic Four smarter too because we want to have everybody get a chance. No, just do the original team. You got. I know that means Johnny Storm's a white kid, but do the classic Fantastic Four team. There's lots of other opportunities to have cool, other diverse characters come into play. I would start to build out the Fantastic Four's family early and fast. I would get She-Hulk involved with them early. I would have Wyatt Wingfoot involved with them early. I would set up a very close friendship and partnership between Black Panther and Reed. It makes sense. Reed wants to protect the Earth. Wakanda has some technology. There should be a nice tight tie in there. I would have, maybe if you're going to do the Fantastic Four, have the first appearance of Reed Richards and some of these people in Black Panther 2 as some scientists that are working on the same goal. Have this goal of investigating kind of what's going on, finding future threats and protecting the Earth. Have that goal established before the Fantastic Four get their powers. That should be what and then when they get their powers, they just are more empowered to solve that mission. It's a lot of road noise. I don't know if this picks up on the microphone. I'm sorry for everybody having to listen to this. Anyway, that's how I would do the Fantastic Four. I'd have it go younger. Again, not too young, but have Reed Richards like Paul Rudd say. Well, Paul, that's a bit of a misnomer there, but have do that in terms of casting. Like I said, just try and find people that are decent actors. You don't need to go for A-list actors. If you do, I would have the big A-list actor be Johnny Storm. That would give you a little bit. It would give you a natural kind of little boost to the idea that he's kind of a Instagram celebrity in today's terms. God, that's sad. But I would do that, and then have all the classic dynamics. You've got the makings of a pretty cool team where you've got some nice things going on. You can get the origin out of the way very early, and you can have you've got a ton of new villains and things to play with that can both happen in the Fantastic Four and spill out into other books. Doctor Doom is certainly one, but you've got a very deep bench of things that you can do, including Galactus, including the Silver Surfer, including even jokey characters like Diablo and stuff like that. I mean, you've got lots of things that can help both bring the Fantastic Four into for their comic and into other comics. So that's how I do the Fantastic Four. Now the X-Men is a little bit of a trickier proposition, and what I would do there is I would have the X-Men be something that's existed the whole time, and I would have like their entry be a little mysterious. And again, this is all in the nature of trying to build multi-movie spanning threats. And so you should at least have some feeling in the early kind of introductions of the X-Men that maybe they're not heroes. They should be, lean into kind of the Claremont run in the early 200s where, the world fears and hates them. I mean, you bring some of that feeling to the audience. So have some of the X-Men show up in some of the earlier movies, and we should get a couple questions out of the way. Are they heroes? Are they? Why didn't they show up when there was all these huge giant threats? Why weren't the X-Men there? Well, they didn't have the rights at that time. Disney didn't. So take advantage of that fact by basically saying, hey, they didn't help because it was a human problem, or they basically give them a little bit of that edge. Start out with fewer X-Men, and maybe you can tie into something the Fantastic Four does that kind of accelerates the mutant gene, so we get then more mutants starting to pop up. There's lots of things you can do there, but have the X-Men really lean into that kind of feared and hunted mentality of maybe we learn that Shield or the government or someone knew there were mutants and were found this out and were hunting them, and had kind of micro sentinels or things that were going out and killing the babies before they could grow. The mutant gene is detected through this covert way, and they were kind of knocking off these mutants before they could grow up and be anything, and just have this long arching government conspiracy. So give the mutants some danger and some feeling of there could be some real challenges here. And this would be so. Then hold off on having an X-Men movie until you're Phase 5 or Phase 6 or whatever you want to do, and just have the mutants start to pop up in some of these films. And maybe the first mutant you see is a villain mutant, an actual villain character who's fighting somebody, and that kind of causes whoever it might be, whatever character or film he's popping up into or she's popping up into, to question, are all the mutants evil? And then you bring in kind of Professor X and some of these X-Men who have been more in hiding. They've been training. You have Professor X's ideals of he wants to change the world, he wants to change the perception of mutants, but really give it a platform of the government's been hunting them down for a long time, and that's why their numbers are so small, and why there's so much mistrust of the world, why there's so much kind of edge to how things are going on, and kind of build that story. I think that creates an interesting dynamic where when you finally get the X-Men out and you have the big kind of X-Men Avengers meeting and you have some of this stuff, you have a natural conflict built up, because we haven't seen, I mean, we've seen kind of groups, individuals assemble to have kind of the Avengers and some of these other films, but we haven't seen kind of two teams collide. There haven't been two teams to collide. Well, you kind of saw that in Civil War, but that was a different story. But make it so that when that first moment comes, there's some real kind of motivation for them to fight or for them to distrust each other. And I think this will spill off nicely to the fans as well, because you'll have some fans who will be still very strong behind the Avengers. They grew up with it. They that's what the MCU means to them, and so they're big Avengers fans. And you have other fans who really think that the X-Men have been mistreated and they're owed some things, and have that dynamic play out. And so I think that those two, that gets the fans invested and gets them interested. It also creates a pretty long platform for films. You've now got about 20 to 30 films you can do out of all these properties, where you've got the world. You've got to do some things with Black Panther and kind of what he's going to do. You've got the Fantastic Four out kind of in this protection mission, which feels very Fantastic Four like. You've got the X-Men being built up as a underground, very paranoid, very feared and hunted team that one day hopefully we can have their big moment, which is to step out of the shadows and be heroes, which will be a big moment for the films. And you can play a lot of things off that. I mean, that gives some natural things for Captain Marvel to do in her next film. It gives, if Doctor Strange is going to open up the multiverse, then we've got all kinds of things there. The thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't have Doctor Strange open up the multiverse and there is the X-Men universe over there, and then they all kind of hop over and the worlds merge. I would not do that storyline. I just think that's a terrible idea. It cheapens a lot of what you can do with the films. So I would do it that way. And I think, in terms of the other big threats, get a couple of them spitting at once. But one of them could be, we borrowed so much from Hickman in kind of how the Avengers was created and some of these pieces. Borrow the kind of the end storyline that they did, where through all this, Reed is discovering that this multiverse, which was opened up in Doctor Strange, the worlds are starting to collapse into each other. So we have this big, massive, unstoppable threat where the worlds are coming together. I mean, that can be an interesting. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you a big villain to fight, but it does create some more interesting tension. And the MCU has to juggle some comedy and some tension and get kind of both working together to really get the next 20 or 30 films going. I think if you did those things, you renew some interest that may be fading after fans who are invested in the MCU decided, all right, I've been through Thanos. I've seen the conclusion to that journey. It gets some very classic versions in their best runs of both Fantastic Four and X-Men kind of out into the picture, and allows them an easy way to integrate. And it it gives a lot of extra things for the existing characters to play off of. That's what I would do. I would be invested into seeing kind of how all those things play out, and kind of the different types of films you can do off that. And again, what I said was very dark, a lot of that kind of stuff. I think there's plenty of room for kind of the comedy and the kind of the lighter films and the darker films, both in the same universe. I think when you say there needs to be tension injected into the MCU to get people kind of invested into what's going to come next, tension can occur in serious movies and spy movies and comedies and romance films, all the rest. I mean, tension is an element that exists in all of these, and I think that's going to be the thing that the MCU should focus on the most. How do they generate good, healthy tension into their films that get people wanting to come back to the screen for 20 to 30 films without purely relying on star power. So that's what I would do. Anyway, what do you think? Leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Would love to hear your comments. Am I way off base? Do you have a better idea? Would love to hear it. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and thanks for listening.